Hi, I'm Eric Siegel, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing and running what in my opinion is probably the best O-scale diesel engine ever made. It's the new Lionel Vision Line GE Evolution Hybrid. One of the first things you'll notice about this engine that puts it in a league of its own is that when you take it out of the box, it's extremely heavy. And that's because unlike most O-scale diesel engines on the market that have metal trucks, pilots, and fuel tanks, but plastic bodies, this engine is entirely made of die-cast metal. There's very little plastic on it. So right away, you feel this wonderful weight to the engine, and it feels like a monster before you even put it on the rails. The fuel tank and trucks on this engine are fairly typical for what you would expect on a high-end O-scale diesel engine. However, the trucks are very nicely detailed and have some of the most impressive detailing I've seen on any trucks on O-scale diesel engines. The pilots on this engine deserve some close attention because they're really cleverly done. On most O-scale engines that you see today, the pilot and the truck are connected to each other, and so when you go around turns, they both turn out together, and it looks really ugly and unprototypical. But the reason they do that is because it's a concession to appeal to a wider market. Because in O-scale, space is a big issue, and a lot of people don't have room for big wide radius turns. And so if you're running something like O54, you have to have that pilot and truck turn together so that the coupler doesn't bind up. Now the alternative is to have a completely fixed pilot, which looks really prototypical, but then you can't run it on those tight turns. Well, what Lionel did is they did a best of both worlds approach where the trucks turn independently of the pilot, they're not connected, and the pilot has some give to it, like that. So what happens is if you're running it on a scale layout where you've got wide turns, the truck will turn, but the pilot will stay relatively still. But if you're running this on tighter turns, the truck will still turn, but the pilot has this independent give to it so that you won't have any bind-ups. And that was really ingenious, and I think it's something that makes this engine really special. The detailing on the pilots is really well done. You've got a coupler cut bar, you've got safety tread on the steps, there's an integrated plow. The MU hoses are nicely done and have separately painted details, which look really nice. In addition to the MU hoses, over on this side, you can't see it, but there's a brake line over here, which usually isn't present on most O-scale diesels today. And then to top it off, you've got this nice vibrant red hose up here, which makes the whole thing look really nice. On first inspection, the cab of this diesel may look pretty typical for what you expect in a high-end O-scale diesel engine. You've got working ditch lights, a safety chain, lots of separately applied grab irons, an opening door, which I'll get back to in a minute, headlight, number boards, separately applied windshield wipers. Over here you've got a movable windscreen, which is a nice touch. There's a mirror here, which I've never seen on any O-scale diesels before. The cab windows open and close, which is also a nice touch. And on the back here you've got another door that opens and closes. The placards here are all legible under a magnifying glass, so overall this is a nice looking cab. And you may say, well, what makes this different from any other diesel I've seen? Well, I'm about to show you. For starters, these little panels on the side of the cab, they actually open. Like that. Pretty cool. And you can see all sorts of piping and wiring here. They are held shut by magnets, so they won't come open unless you want them to. When you open up the front door on the cab, you can see that it's completely detailed inside. The walls are the correct beige coloring. The placard on the door is legible. It says "Open with caution." There's a fire extinguisher there on the floor. And then up on the wall, there's a box labeled fuses and torpedoes. And then lastly, sort of the icing on the cake as far as cab details go, is this removable cab roof, which reveals a fully detailed interior. You've got detailed figures, detailed chairs, detailed consoles, there's another fire extinguisher, all sorts of extra detail that just make this engine really cool. Toward the rear of the engine is the smoke unit, and this smoke unit probably functions a little differently than what you're used to, meaning that it doesn't just pour smoke out constantly. It's designed to emulate the prototype hybrid locomotive, and so the smoke unit only turns on at certain points in the engine's operation. Specifically, when you rev up the RPMs on the Lionel remote, you'll get a big puff of smoke out, and then it'll die down to just a little wisp of smoke for the rest of the time. Also, when the engine is idling, after a few seconds the engine will go into a prototypical sleep mode, and then you won't get any smoke out of the smoke unit then either. It's pretty cool, and when I start this engine up in a couple minutes, if you look carefully you'll see what I'm talking about. Behind the smoke unit is this whole radiator housing, and this pops up to reveal the legacy controls and a battery compartment. But if you look under the cover, there's a motor here, and that motor is used to turn these cooling fans. And that's another really cool thing about this engine, is that these fans actually work. Now, they don't turn all the time, they only operate at a prototypical time, and that means when the RPMs are really high in the engine, you'll see these fans kick on and start to spin. So when I turn this engine on in a minute, I will rev the RPMs up and you'll see the fans turn on and start to spin. Okay, we've got track power now, so let's go ahead and turn this puppy on. When I do, listen to the sound set. Really great sounds. Some of the best sounds I've ever heard in a diesel engine. There's that headlight coming on, and then there's those wonderful battery charge lights on the bottom. And then this engine also has ground lights right here, which I'm a big fan of as well. Here we are in the back of the engine again, and now I can show you what I was talking about with the smoke unit and the fans. The smoke unit, as you can see, is just putting out a little wisp of smoke, but when I kick the RPMs up, watch what happens. A big plume of smoke comes out, and then it dies back to a wisp like it is now. If I kick it up again, same thing. And then when I get to the 4th RPM level, those cooling fans will kick on. And there they go. Pretty cool. Another really cool feature of this engine is the sleep mode feature. On the real-life prototype, when the engine sits idle for a while, the engine actually shuts off so that it doesn't keep on pumping out exhaust into the air. And then when it's needed, it powers the engine back on. Well, this model does the same thing. If you let it sit idle for about 30 seconds or so, it will actually go to sleep. So now let's watch it go to sleep. And there it goes. The engine has just gone into sleep mode. And it will stay like that until I wake it up by issuing some sort of engine command, either throttling the engine up or blowing the horn or the coupler or something like that. So it's pretty cool like that. So let's wake it up by throwing the front coupler. You'll hear this long bell that lets you know that it's waking up. And then after the bell's done, everything will come back to life. And there we go. Pretty neat.
Dispatcher, this is GE 2010 here. Am I clear to make a move? Over.
Affirmative 2010. You are cleared onto the main. Over. GE Demonstrator 2010. You may depart. Over.
Roger that. I've got green. 2010 out. Signing off. 2010 out.
So that about wraps it up for this video. Like I said, this is probably the best O-scale diesel engine I've ever seen. It really raises the bar in terms of details and features on O-scale diesels. And it'll be interesting to see what MTH's reaction is, if they react at all. But it's just an amazing engine, and I'm sure if you weren't thinking about getting one before this video, you probably are now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time.